The billionaire spent Thanksgiving alone until his plant stylist said, "You look pathetic." Ethan Blackwood had 3 commas in his bank account, a penthouse view of the Seattle skyline, and absolutely 0 people to call on a Thursday night. It was the night before Thanksgiving. The city below was a grid of red and white traffic lights, everyone rushing home to families, to warm ovens, to arguments about politics and burnt pies. But up here, on the 45th floor of the Nebula Tower, the air was perfectly filtered, 68 degrees, and smelled of nothing but expensive leather and loneliness. Ethan stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling window, swirling a glass of amber whiskey. He was 32 years old, the founder of the world's most advanced cloud computing firm, and he looked like a man who had everything yet held nothing. He took a sip. The liquid burned pleasantly on its way down. He turned his back on the city, ready to retreat into his office and work until his eyes burned. That was when he heard the voice. "Look, I know you are dramatic," a woman's voice muttered from the shadows. "I get it. The humidity dropped 2% yesterday, but dropping a leaf, that is just petty." Ethan frowned. He set his glass down on a coaster made of black marble. He walked toward the living area, his Italian loafers making no sound on the polished concrete floor. There, kneeling beside a massive fiddle-leaf fig tree in the corner, was Harper Rose. She was not supposed to be here. The maintenance staff usually cleared out by 5 p.m., but here she was at 7:30 p.m., wearing oversized denim overalls covered in soil stains, her hair a chaotic mess of curls tied up with a green ribbon. She was holding a spray bottle like a weapon and glaring at the tree. "Miss Rose," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the quiet. Harper jumped. She spun around, clutching the spray bottle to her chest. Her eyes were wide, the color of warm honey, a stark contrast to the steel gray of Ethan's apartment. "Oh, Mr. Blackwood," she gasped, pressing a hand to her heart. "You scared the chlorophyll out of me." "I live here," Ethan replied dryly. "You are the one talking to a plant in the dark." "He is not just a plant," she corrected him instantly. "His name is Ferdinand, and he is having a seasonal depressive episode." Ethan stared at her. He blinked once, slowly. In his world of binary code and logic, Harper Rose was a glitch. She owned a small, struggling plant shop downtown called the Concrete Jungle, and his assistant had hired her to make his penthouse look less like a serial killer's lair. "It is a tree, Miss Rose," Ethan said, stepping closer. "It does not have feelings. It has photosynthesis." Harper stood up, wiping dirt from her overalls. "That is exactly what a person with no feelings would say. Look at him. His leaves are drooping. He senses the vibe in here. It is sterile, cold. It is like living inside a hard drive. This hard drive costs $12 million, Ethan countered. "And yet Ferdinand is still trying to die," Harper shot back. "Money cannot buy a will to live, Mr. Blackwood, even for a ficus." Ethan felt a sharp prick of irritation. He was not used to people speaking to him this way. His employees trembled when he walked into a room. Harper Rose looked at him like he was just another underwatered succulent. "Are you finished?" he asked, checking his watch. "I have work to do." "Almost," she said, grabbing her canvas tote bag. "I just need to check the monster in the bedroom." And suddenly the building groaned. It was a deep, structural sound, like a beast waking up in the walls. Then, with a sharp electronic sigh, the lights died. Total darkness swallowed the room. The hum of the refrigerator ceased. The ambient glow of the smart home panels vanished. For a second, the silence was absolute, heavy enough to crush a man. "Okay." Harper's voice trembled slightly in the dark. That was ominous. Ethan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "It is the storm." The backup generators will kick in within 10 seconds. They stood in the dark, counting. 1, 2, 3. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Nothing happened. Unbelievable, Ethan muttered. I paid $50,000 for that backup system. A beam of light cut through the darkness. Ethan squinted. Harper had pulled a heavy-duty camping lantern out of her bag. She clicked it on, casting a warm yellow glow that illuminated her face, and the terrified-looking fiddle-leaf fig. Always be prepared, she said with a grin. Seattle power grids are about as reliable as a paper umbrella. She set the lantern on the coffee table. The light created a small island of warmth in the vast, cold cavern of the living room. Ethan felt strangely drawn to it. He walked over, loosening his tie. The elevators will be down, he stated. You are stuck here, Miss Rose. Harper shrugged. I have been stuck in worse places. Once I got locked in a greenhouse with a swarm of angry bees. This is luxurious by comparison. At least here, the only thing that might sting me is your personality. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. He sat on the edge of his pristine white sofa, keeping a safe distance from her dusty overalls. My personality is efficient. There is a difference. If you say so, she said, digging into her bag again. Hey, since we are trapped in the dark ages, are you hungry? I was going to eat this on the bus, but... She pulled out a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. It was smashed flat. It is turkey, cranberry, and cream cheese on sourdough, she explained. The deli downstairs marks them down to $2 after 6 p.m. It is technically a day-old sandwich, but the flavors have had time to marry. Ethan looked at the sad, flattened object. I have a private chef on retainer. I do not eat day-old discount sandwiches. Suit yourself, Harper said, tearing the paper open. Your private chef is probably at home with his family, and your smart fridge is currently a dumb box. So it is either this or starvation. She broke the sandwich in half and held out a piece. The smell hit Ethan instantly. Roasted turkey, sweet cranberry, the tang of sourdough. His stomach gave a traitorous growl that echoed loudly in the silent room. Harper raised an eyebrow, a challenge in her eyes. Fine, Ethan grumbled. He took the sandwich. He took a bite. It was cold. It was squished. And it was, without a doubt, the best thing he had tasted in months. It tasted like comfort. They ate in silence for a moment, the rain lashing against the glass like 1,000 tiny whips. "Why are you working the night before Thanksgiving?" Ethan asked, wiping a crumb from his lip. "Rent is due on the 1st, Harper said, chewing thoughtfully, "and my landlord does not accept good vibes as payment. Plus, plants do not know it is a holiday. If I do not mist the ferns at the law firm on 4th Street, they will be crispy by Monday. What about you? Why are you alone?" Ethan stiffened. He looked at the lantern, watching the flame flicker. "I am not alone. I have employees. I have associates." "That is not what I meant," Harper said softly. "I mean, where is your family?" "Your friends." "Who is waiting for you?" "No one is waiting," Ethan said, his voice dropping. "My parents are in Europe. My business partner is in Aspen. Holidays are inefficient. They disrupt the workflow." Harper stopped, chewing. She looked at him, really looked at him, with an expression that made Ethan uncomfortable. It wasn't pity. It was confusion. "That is the saddest thing I have ever heard," she said bluntly. "And I once watched a cactus drown." "I do not need your pity, Miss Rose," Ethan snapped, standing up and walking back to the window. The city was dark now, a black ocean beneath them. "It is not pity," Harper called out. It is logic. You have a couch that costs more than my student loans, but you are eating a $2 sandwich in the dark with the plant lady. Something in your algorithm is broken, Mr. Blackwood. Ethan turned to retort, but the words died in his throat, because she was right. He was the king of this castle, and he was starving. So, Harper said, dusting crumbs off her hands, what are you doing tomorrow? Working, Ethan replied. I have a merger to review. Nope, Harper said, shaking her head. Absolutely not. That is illegal in 48 states. You are coming with me. Ethan blinked. Excuse me. My friends and I are doing a Friendsgiving, she explained. It is for all the strays who cannot afford to fly home. It is, in Brooklyn, well, the Seattle version of Brooklyn. My apartment is tiny, the oven overheats, and my roommate plays the banjo very badly, but there will be mashed potatoes with actual butter. I am not going to your apartment, Ethan said, crossing his arms. I do not do. Cozy. Clearly, Harper laughed. But the offer stands. Unless you want to spend tomorrow explaining to Ferdinand why you are both alone. She stood up and grabbed her lantern. The power is probably not coming back on tonight. I am going to walk down the stairs. 45 flights. Good cardio. She walked to the door, the light bobbing with her steps. She paused with her hand on the handle. 2 p.m., Mr. Blackwood, she said. 1400 hours, since you like efficiency. Don't wear a tie. You will look ridiculous. And then she was gone. Ethan stood alone in the dark. The silence rushed back in, colder than before. He looked at the fiddle-leaf fig in the corner. Even in the shadows, the tree looked pathetic. Don't look at me like that, Ethan muttered to the plant. But as he sat back down on the sofa, the taste of cranberry and sourdough still lingering on his tongue, he realized something terrifying. He did not want to be here tomorrow. The next day, the rain had stopped, leaving Seattle washed clean and gray. Ethan Blackwood stood in front of his walk-in closet, staring at rows of bespoke suits. Navy, charcoal, black, midnight, blue. It was a uniform of power. Don't wear a tie, she had said. He reached for a gray cashmere sweater. He put it back. He reached for a white button-down. Too stiff. This is ridiculous, he said to the empty room. I am not going. He walked out of the closet. He went to his kitchen. He opened the refrigerator. It was fully stocked with sparkling water, organic kale, and protein shakes. It was perfect. It was healthy. It was utterly depressing. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother in Paris. 1 email from his lawyer. 0 invitations to eat mashed potatoes. Ethan cursed softly. He went back to the closet. At 1:45 p.m., a black sedan pulled up to a crumbling brick building in the Capitol Hill district. It was a neighborhood of murals, coffee shops, and people who looked like they played in indie bands. Ethan stepped out of the car. He was wearing dark jeans, stiff, because he had never worn them before, and a black turtleneck that cost $600. He held a bottle of wine that cost $3,000. He looked at the building. There was a bicycle chained to the railing that was missing a wheel. Someone had spray-painted "Art is Pain" on the front door. "You are lost, sir," the driver said, rolling down the window. "Do you want me to wait?" "No," Ethan said, tightening his grip on the wine bottle. "Go home, Marcus. Happy Thanksgiving." The driver looked shocked, but he nodded and drove away. Ethan walked up the steps. He found the buzzer labeled "Rose per mile, Lyle Suvi, the dog." He pressed it. "Who is it?" a static-filled voice crackled. "It is." "Ethan," he said, feeling foolish. There was a pause. Then a loud buzz. Ethan pushed the door open and climbed 3 flights of stairs that smelled faintly of incense and old wood. When he reached apartment 3B, the door was already open. Music spilled out into the hallway, something folksy and upbeat. Laughter. The smell of roasting garlic and rosemary. Harper appeared in the doorway. She was wearing a velvet dress the color of rust, and she was barefoot. Her hair was loose, a wild halo around her face. She held a wooden spoon covered in something orange. She looked at him. She looked at his expensive shoes. She looked at the $3,000 wine. "You came," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I was in the neighborhood," Ethan lied smoothly. "Right," Harper grinned. "In Capitol Hill. Because you were just browsing for vintage vinyls." "I brought wine," Ethan said, holding out the bottle like a peace offering. Harper took it. She inspected the label. "Chateau Margaux, 1996. Okay. I was going to serve boxed wine that I bought at the gas station. But this works too." She stepped aside. "Come in, Mr. Blackwood. Try not to trip over the dog." Ethan stepped inside, and it was like walking into a kaleidoscope. The apartment was small, but every inch was alive. Plants hung from the ceiling, crawled up the walls, and sat on every available surface. The furniture was mismatched: a yellow armchair, a plaid sofa, a coffee table made from a shipping pallet. There were people everywhere. A guy with a beard was tuning a banjo in the corner. A girl with pink hair was setting the table. A massive golden retriever was sleeping in the middle of the rug. "Everyone," Harper shouted over the music. "This is Ethan. He looks like a vampire, but he brought the fancy juice." The room went quiet. The banjo player looked up. "Ethan?" the guy asked. "Like Ethan Blackwood, the Nebula guy." Ethan stiffened. He was used to being recognized. He prepared his usual speech about privacy and non-disclosure agreements. "Yeah," Harper said, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him into the room. "He is my client. He has a very sad ficus. Be nice to him, or no pie for you." She dragged him into the kitchen, which was the size of a closet. It was hot and chaotic. Pots were bubbling on the stove. Flour was dusted over the counter. "Here," Harper said, shoving a knife into his hand. "You are just in time. The onions need chopping." Ethan looked at the knife. It was a cheap, dull vegetable knife. "You want me to chop onions?" "Unless you want to mash the potatoes," Harper said, opening the oven to check on the turkey. "But that requires upper body strength, and you look like you only lift heavy wallets." Ethan narrowed his eyes. He took off his $600 jacket and draped it over a chair. He rolled up the sleeves of his turtleneck. "I will chop the onions," he said, "and I will do it with more precision than anyone in this room." Harper laughed. It was a bright, genuine sound that seemed to vibrate in Ethan's chest. "You are on, CEO," she said. "Don't cry. It ruins the mascara." Ethan began to chop. He approached the onion like a coding problem. Efficient strokes. Uniform cubes. He focused entirely on the task, blocking out the noise, the heat, the strangeness of being in this tiny, vibrant box. "Whoa," the banjo player said, leaning over the counter. "Look at those knife skills. Dude is a machine." "He is not a machine," Harper said softly, coming up beside him. She bumped her shoulder against his. "He is just focused." Ethan paused. He looked down at her. She smelled like vanilla and sage. She was smiling at him, not as a billionaire, but as a guy chopping onions in her kitchen. For the first time in years, the knot of tension in his shoulders began to loosen. "Is this adequate?" he asked, pointing to the pile of diced onions. "It is perfect," Harper said. She dipped a finger into a bowl of frosting and tapped it onto the tip of his nose. Ethan froze. He went cross-eyed, trying to look at the white smudge on his nose. "You missed a spot," she whispered. Then she turned back to the stove, humming along to the music. Ethan wiped the frosting away. He tasted it. Sweet. He looked around the room. The pink-haired girl waved at him. The dog let out a happy sigh in his sleep. Ethan Blackwood picked up the knife and reached for another onion. He wasn't leaving any time soon. The apartment was a sensory overload. Ethan was used to silence. His world was soundproofed glass, whispered conversations in boardrooms, the hum of servers. Here, in Harper's living room, the noise was a physical thing. The banjo player, whose name turned out to be Leo, was strumming a frantic bluegrass tune. The pink-haired girl, Maya, was arguing loudly with the oven-timer. A golden retriever named Barnaby was snoring like a chainsaw under the coffee table. And then there was the heat. The tiny kitchen radiated warmth, smelling of roasted garlic, sage, and something sweet burning slightly at the edges. Ethan stood by the counter, still holding the knife. He had diced 4 onions, with the precision of a surgeon. "Okay, Mr. CEO," Harper said, breezing past him with a tray of biscuits. "You have graduated from onions. Now, the potatoes." She pointed to a massive pot on the stove. "Mash. Do not be gentle. They like it rough." Ethan stared at the pot. "I have never mashed a potato in my life." "Shocking," Harper deadpanned. Here is the masher. It is older than me. Treat it with respect." She handed him a metal tool with a wooden handle that looked like it belonged in a museum. Ethan took it. He rolled up his sleeves further, revealing forearms that were surprisingly defined for a man who spent his life typing. He attacked the potatoes. "Harder," Leo shouted from the living room, strumming a chord. "Put your back into it, man. Imagine they are your competitors." Ethan paused. He looked at the lumpy white mass. He thought about the board of directors who had questioned his last acquisition. He thought about Chloe Sterling, his Coupeau and Dex girlfriend, who had called him emotionally unavailable in a company-wide memo. He brought the masher down with force. Thump. "Yes," Harper cheered, clapping her flour-dusted hands. "Channel that rage. Make them smooth." Ethan mashed. He mashed until his triceps burned. He mashed until the steam curled around his face, dampening his hair. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or server load. He was thinking about lumps. Okay, Harper laughed, placing a hand on his arm. "They are dead. You killed them. Good job." She took the masher from him and handed him a wooden spoon. "Now stir in the butter, and the cream, and the roasted garlic. Do not skimp on the butter. My arteries are ready." Ethan obeyed. He watched the yellow butter melt into the white clouds, swirling it in hypnotic circles. It was satisfying. "Dinner is served," Maya yelled, carrying a platter of turkey that looked slightly charred on one side. They squeezed around a table that was clearly too small for 6 people. Ethan found himself wedged between Leo and a quiet girl named Sam, who was knitting a scarf while she ate. "So," Leo said, piling potatoes onto his plate, "what is it like being rich? Do you have a swimming pool full of gold coins? Like Scrooge McDuck?" Ethan blinked. "Number. That would be highly impractical. Gold is a soft metal. Diving into it would result in severe injury. The table went silent for a second. Then Harper burst out laughing. "He is serious," she gasped, wiping a tear from her eye. "He actually analyzed the physics of a cartoon duck." Leo grinned, slapping Ethan on the back. "I like this guy. He is weird. But he mashes a mean potato." Ethan felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't the wine. It wasn't the heat of the room. It was acceptance. They ate. They talked over each other. They argued about the best Star Wars movie. Ethan argued for Empire Strikes Back, based on narrative structure. Leo argued for Return of the Jedi because of Ewoks. Ethan found himself defending his position with passion. He used words like thematic resonance and character arc. Harper watched him from across the table, her eyes sparkling. "You are a nerd," she whispered, when there was a lull in the conversation. "I am an intellectual," Ethan corrected, taking a sip of his $3,000 wine from a chipped mug that said "World's Okayest Plant Mom." "Same difference," she said, clinking her mug against his. After dinner, the food coma hit. The group migrated to the living room. Leo picked up his banjo again, playing something slow and mournful. The rain started up outside, tapping against the window pane. Ethan sat on the plaid sofa. He felt heavy. His eyelids drooped. The combination of carbohydrates, wine, and emotional overstimulation was potent. "You look like you are about to power down," Harper said, sitting on the floor near his feet. She was leaning against the sofa, her head tilted back to look at him. "I am fine," Ethan mumbled. "Just processing." "Processing a nap," she teased. "It is okay. Barnaby won't judge. He sleeps 20 hours a day." Ethan looked at the dog, who was twitching in his sleep. He looked at Harper. Her hair was messy. There was a smudge of flour on her cheek. She looked beautiful. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Harper asked. "The lumpy potatoes?" "For the invitation," Ethan said. "And the onions." Harper smiled. It was a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Any time, Mr. Blackwood. Any time." Ethan closed his eyes. Just for a second, he told himself. Just to rest his eyes. The next thing he knew, he was drifting. The sound of the banjo faded. The smell of sage lingered. And for the first time in 6 months, Ethan Blackwood fell asleep, without a pill, without a white noise machine, without a worry in the world. Ethan woke up to the sound of a bird chirping. Not a digital alarm. A real bird. He opened his eyes. He was disoriented. The ceiling was cracked plaster, not smooth drywall. There was a spider plant hanging directly above his face. He sat up. His neck was stiff. He was still wearing his turtleneck, but someone had draped a knitted blanket over him, yellow and orange smelling of lavender. "Morning sunshine," a voice called out. Ethan looked toward the balcony door. It was opened. Harper was out there, wrapped in a thick cardigan, holding a watering can. He stood up, stretching his back. He walked to the door. The air was crisp and cold. Seattle was waking up, gray and misty. "I fell asleep," Ethan said, his voice rough with sleep. "You passed out," Harper corrected, not looking up from a pot of basil. "You were out cold by 9 p.m. Leo tried to balance a biscuit on your head. I stopped him." "Thank you," Ethan said, rubbing his face. I usually have trouble sleeping." "Insomnia?" Harper asked. "Something like that," Ethan admitted. "My mind does not shut off." "Well," Harper said, standing up and wiping her hands on her jeans. "Apparently, all you needed was 5 pounds of carbohydrates and a banjo lullaby." She turned to face him. The morning light caught the stray curls around her face. She looked tired but happy. "Coffee?" she offered. It is not espresso. It is from a French press, and it is strong enough to wake the dead. Please, Ethan said. They sat on the small balcony, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs. The city was quiet below them. You have a lot of plants, Ethan observed, looking around. The balcony was a jungle. Ferns, succulents, ivy, flowers he couldn't name. They are my babies, Harper said, touching a leaf gently. I rescue them. People buy them, kill them, and throw them out. I bring them back. Is that your business model? Ethan asked. Rescuing dying plants. Not exactly, Harper laughed. My business model is trying to convince people that nature belongs indoors. But it is hard. People want plastic. They want easy. They do not want to deal with dirt. She sighed, looking out at the skyline. My dream is to open a place, a real place, not just a shop, a cafe, a greenhouse. Somewhere people can come and just breathe, like a sanctuary in the city. Coffee, plants, oxygen, no Wi-Fi. Just connection. Ethan watched her. He saw the passion in her eyes, the way her hands moved when she talked about it. It was the same way he used to talk about cloud computing, back when it was just an idea in a garage. Why haven't you done it? He asked. Harper snorted. Money, Mr. Blackwood. Capital. Real estate in Seattle is insane. And banks do not give loans to plant ladies with student debt and a dream. Ethan looked at her. He could write a check right now. He could buy her a building. He could fund her dream 10 times over without blinking. But he stopped himself. He remembered the look on her face when he offered to pay for the sandwich. She was proud. She didn't want charity. She wanted respect. It is a good idea, he said simply. The city needs it. People are disconnected. Harper looked at him, surprised. You think so? The guy who lives in a glass box thinks we need more dirt. I think, Ethan said, looking into his coffee, that even glass boxes get lonely. Harper smiled. It was a soft, knowing smile. Well, she said, maybe one day. For now, I just have to keep Ferdinand alive. She stood up. I should get ready. I have a shift at the flower market. Ethan stood up, too. He felt reluctant to leave. He felt grounded. Harper, he said. It was the first time he had used her first name. She paused. Yeah. My company, he started, feeling awkward. Nebula. We are hosting a launch party next week for our new sustainable tech initiative. The theme is Future City. We need greenery, a lot of it, living walls, installations, something that says technology meets nature. Harper's eyes widened. You want me to do it? I want to hire you as a consultant, Ethan said, slipping back into his business persona. Full creative control. Budget is not an issue. Can you handle it? Harper stared at him. Then a slow grin spread across her face. Mr. Blackwood, she said, extending a hand, I can make your tech bros cry with the beauty of a fern. You have got a deal. Ethan shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm rough with calluses. It felt real. Good, he said. See you Monday. He walked out of the apartment, down the stairs, and into the gray morning. He didn't call his driver. He walked. He wanted to feel the cold air on his face. He wanted to remember the smell of sage and coffee. He had a feeling that Harper Rose was about to change everything. The Nebula launch party was the event of the season. The venue was a massive industrial warehouse, converted into a sleek event space. But thanks to Harper, it didn't look like a warehouse. It looked like a forest. Living walls of moss and ferns lined the entrance. Massive palm trees reached toward the high ceilings. The air smelled of eucalyptus and rain, pumped in through the vents. It was breathtaking. Ethan stood on the VIP balcony, looking down at the crowd. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. Beside him stood Chloe Sterling. Chloe was beautiful in a terrifying way. She wore a silver dress that looked like liquid metal. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. She was Nebula's Kuo, his ex-girlfriend, and the shark in the tank. "It is excessive," Chloe said, sipping her champagne. "All this foliage. Are we selling cloud storage or salad?" "It is immersive," Ethan corrected, scanning the crowd. "It represents the organic growth of our network. It is a metaphor, Chloe." "It is a fire hazard," Chloe countered. "Who is responsible for this?" "That little gardener you hired." "Her name is Harper," Ethan said, his voice sharpening, "and she is a plant stylist." "Stylist!" Chloe scoffed. "Please. She is a glorified florist. I saw her earlier. She was wearing a dress that looked like she made it out of curtains." Ethan turned to look at her. "Be nice, Chloe." She did an incredible job. "I am always nice," Chloe smiled, showing too many teeth. "I am just concerned. You seem distracted lately, Ethan, spending a lot of time with the help." "She is a consultant," Ethan said, "not the help." "Whatever you say," Chloe shrugged. "Just remember, the board is watching. We cannot afford any slip-ups, especially with the rumors about the data breach." Ethan frowned. "There is no breach. The system is secure." "I hope so," Chloe said darkly, "because if there is a leak, it will be your head on the block, not mine." She walked away, her heels clicking on the metal floor. Ethan watched her go, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. He went downstairs to find Harper. He found her near the bar, talking to a group of investors. She was wearing a vintage green dress that flowed around her like water. Her hair was pinned up with fresh flowers. She looked radiant, and she was holding court. "The ficus lyrata represents resilience," she was explaining to a man in a suit. "Just like your portfolio, it needs stability, but it also needs room to grow toward the light." The investor nodded, looking mesmerized. "Fascinating. Tell me more about this." "Root structure." Ethan smiled. He walked over. "Interrupting?" he asked. Harper turned. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Ethan, I was just explaining to Mr. Henderson here why his office plants keep dying. Over-watering. It is a classic rookie mistake." "Indeed," Ethan said, nodding at Henderson. "Harper is an expert. You should listen to her." Henderson beamed. "I certainly will. Charming woman, Blackwood. Very refreshing." He walked away. Harper let out a breath she had been holding. "Oh, my God," she whispered. "That guy asked me if I could talk to his bonsai tree. He thinks I am a plant whisperer." "Aren't you?" Ethan teased. "Shush," she winked. "Do not give away my secrets." "So, what do you think? Is it green enough for you?" "It is perfect," Ethan said honestly. "You transformed the space. It feels alive." "That was the goal," Harper said, looking around. "Although your Kufo seems to hate it." She looked at a fern like it personally insulted her ancestors. "Chloe hates everything she cannot control," Ethan said. "Ignore her." "Hard to ignore a woman who looks like she eats glass for breakfast," Harper muttered. Just then the music stopped. A spotlight hit the center stage. Chloe walked up to the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," her voice boomed through the speakers. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the future of Nebula. Applause rippled through the room. However, Chloe continued, her voice dropping an octave, before we begin the presentation, I have some unfortunate news. The room went silent. Ethan frowned. This was not in the script. We have discovered a significant security breach in our prototype server, Chloe said, her eyes scanning the crowd. Sensitive data has been accessed by an unauthorized external source. Murmurs broke out. Ethan started walking toward the stage. What was she doing? Our security team has traced the leak, Chloe said, her gaze landing directly on Harper. It seems the breach occurred during the installation of these decorations. Someone used a maintenance port to bypass the firewall. Every head in the room turned to look at Harper. Harper froze. She looked at Ethan, confusion written all over her face. What is she talking about? The access logs show a login from a device registered to the concrete jungle, Chloe said, reading from a tablet. Miss Rose's business, gasps, whispers. That is a lie, Harper shouted, stepping forward. I do not even know what a firewall is. I plant trees. Security, Chloe said calmly. Please, escort Miss Rose out. We will be contacting the authorities. Two large security guards moved toward Harper. Ethan Harper looked at him, her eyes wide with panic. Tell them, this is crazy. Ethan stood there. His mind was racing. A login from her device. How? She had been in his penthouse. She had access to the Wi-Fi. Was it possible? Had she been using him? He hesitated. It was only for a second, a split second of doubt. But Harper saw it. She saw him calculate. She saw him weigh the probability. She saw him wonder if the girl with the lumpy potatoes was actually a corporate spy. And that second broke her heart. Don't touch me, Harper snapped at the guard. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She walked up to Ethan. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. I thought you were different, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I thought you were just lonely. But you are not lonely, Ethan. You are empty. Splash. She threw the champagne in his face. The cold liquid dripped down his expensive tuxedo, stinging his eyes. My hands are for planting flowers, she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Not for stealing your pathetic code. She turned around. She held her head high, and she walked out of the forest she had built, leaving Ethan standing in a puddle of expensive wine and regret. The week that followed was a blur of gray rain and lawyers. Ethan sat in his office, staring at the empty chair opposite his desk. The champagne stain was gone from his suit, but the sting remained. The investigation is ongoing, Chloe said, sitting on the edge of his desk. But the board is happy we caught it early. They are calling me a hero. You set her up, Ethan said quietly. He wasn't asking. I protected the company, Chloe corrected, examining her manicure. She was a liability, Ethan. A distraction. You were getting, Bing I Sin, soft. Eating carbs. Sleeping. It was embarrassing. She didn't do it, Ethan said, standing up. I checked the logs myself last night. The IP address was spoofed. It came from inside the building. From your office, Chloe. Chloe froze. Her eyes narrowed. Careful, Ethan, she warned. You sound paranoid. If you go to the board with that without solid proof, they will think you are compromised, emotionally unstable. They might, even, remove you. Ethan looked at her. He realized with a jolt of clarity that he didn't care. Get out of my office, he said. Chloe laughed. She stood up and smoothed her skirt. "Fine. But remember, Ethan, I am the only one who knows how to run this ship. You are just the visionary. And visionaries, they burn out." She left. Ethan sat back down. He picked up his phone. He dialed Harper's number. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." He tried the shop. "We are sorry. The concrete jungle is currently closed for business." Ethan felt a cold panic rising in his chest. He grabbed his coat. He ran to the elevator. He drove to her shop downtown. The windows were papered over. A sign on the door read, "Eviction Notice." He drove to her apartment in Capitol Hill. He ran up the 3 flights of stairs. He pounded on door 3B. The door opened. It wasn't Harper. It was Leo, the banjo player. He looked tired. "Where is she?" Ethan demanded. Leo looked at him with pure disgust. "You have some nerve showing up here, man." "I need to talk to her," Ethan said. "I know she didn't do it. I can fix this." "You broke it," Leo said, crossing his arms. "She lost the shop, man. The landlord saw the news. Corporate spy. He kicked her out. She is gone." "Gone where?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking. "Away," Leo said. "Somewhere where Billionaire jerks. Cannot find her. She went to stay with her aunt in Oregon. Or maybe she went to the moon. I don't know. But she left this for you." Leo reached behind the door and pulled out a small, potted plant. It was a succulent, a cactus specifically. "She said it is a prickly pear," Leo said, shoving it into Ethan's chest, "because it is tough, spiky, and impossible to hug, just like you." Leo slammed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway, holding the cactus. He looked at the tiny, thorny plant. It was alive. It was green. He walked back to his car. He put the cactus in the passenger seat. He drove back to his glass tower. That night the insomnia returned with a vengeance. The silence was deafening. The fiddle-leaf fig in the corner had dropped 3 more leaves. Ethan sat on his couch, staring at the cactus. "I am going to fix this," he told the plant. The plant said nothing. But it didn't die, either. And that was a start. 2 weeks later, Ethan found her. It took a private investigator and 3 days of searching. But he found her. She wasn't in Oregon. She was at the Pike Place Market, working a temporary stall at the weekend plant fair. It was pouring rain. Of course it was. Ethan parked his car a block away. He watched her from a distance. She was struggling. Her tent was old, and the wind was whipping the canvas violently. She was trying to hold down a tarp over her plants while water pooled around her ankles. She looked exhausted. Her hair was wet, plastered to her face. She was shivering. Ethan didn't think. He didn't plan. He just moved. He got out of the car. He wasn't wearing a coat. He was wearing a suit, because that was all he owned. He ran through the rain, dodging tourists and puddles. He reached the stall just as a gust of wind threatened to blow the whole tent away. "Harper!" cried out, grabbing the metal pole. "No, please." Suddenly, a hand grabbed the pole above hers. A strong, steady hand. "I have got it!" a voice shouted over the wind. Harper looked up. She blinked, water dripping from her eyelashes. "Ethan, grab the other side," he yelled, wrestling with the canvas. "We need to weigh it down." "What are you doing here?" she screamed. "Go away." "Not happening," Ethan shouted back. "Where are the weights?" "I don't have any," she cried. "I used sandbags, but they broke." Ethan looked around. He saw a stack of heavy fertilizer bags near a truck nearby. "Hold this," he ordered. He let go of the pole and ran to the truck. He grabbed two 50-pound bags of soil. He threw one over his shoulder. The dirt leaked out, staining his pristine white shirt brown. He didn't care. He ran back. He slammed the bag onto the tent leg. He ran back for another, and another. He was soaked. His shoes were ruined. His hair was a mess. He was lifting heavy bags of manure in the middle of a storm, panting like a dog. Finally the tent held. The wind howled, but the canvas stayed put. Ethan stood there, chest heaving, hands covered in mud. He looked at Harper. She was staring at him like he had grown a second head. "You ruined your suit," she said, quietly. "I have others?" Ethan gasped, wiping rain from his eyes. "You are covered in cow manure," she pointed out. "It is organic," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. Harper let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She crossed her arms, shivering. "Why are you here, Ethan? To accuse me of stealing your secrets again? Or did you just come to watch me fail?" "I came to tell you that you were right," Ethan said, stepping closer. "About everything. The plants, the glass box, me." "I don't care," Harper said, turning away. "You hesitated. You looked at me, and you thought I was a thief. That is what hurts, Ethan. Not the job. Not the money. The doubt." "I know," Ethan said, "and I hate myself for it. I am programmed to doubt, Harper. I am programmed to look for the flaw in the code. But you—" He reached out, but stopped before touching her. "You are not code," he said softly. "You are the only real thing I have found in 10 years, and I am terrified of losing you." Harper looked at him. She looked at the mud on his shirt. She looked at the desperation in his eyes. "I cleared your name," Ethan said. "I found the proof. Chloe did it. I am going to expose her. But none of that matters if you are standing out here in the rain." "I like the rain," Harper sniffed, wiping her nose. "Liar," Ethan smiled. "You are freezing." He took off his wet jacket. It was heavy and cold, but he wrapped it around her shoulders anyway. "Come back," he said. "Not to work. Not as a consultant. Just come back. Ferdinand misses you." He dropped another leaf. It was dramatic. Harper looked down at the jacket. It smelled like him, expensive cologne and rain. "If I come back," she said, looking up at him through her lashes, "you have to promise me one thing." "Anything," Ethan said. "You have to help me repot a cactus," she said, "with your bare hands. No gloves." Ethan grimaced. "That sounds painful." "It is," Harper grinned, a small, tentative thing. "It builds character." "Deal," Ethan said. He held out his hand. It was dirty, wet, and shaking slightly. Harper took it. "You look pathetic," she said affectionately. "I feel pathetic," Ethan admitted. "Good," she said, squeezing his hand. "Now help me load these ferns into your fancy car. They hate the cold." Ethan looked at his leather seats. He looked at the muddy plants. "Right," he said. "Of course." And as he loaded a dripping fern into his passenger seat, Ethan Blackwood realized that for the first time in his life he didn't mind a little dirt. The Nebula headquarters was a fortress of glass and steel, looming over the city like a monument to efficiency. But inside, chaos was brewing. It was Monday morning. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Chloe Sterling had called an emergency vote of no confidence. Her agenda was simple: remove Ethan Blackwood as CEO, citing erratic behavior and security negligence. Ethan stood in his office. He was wearing a fresh suit, but he felt different. He felt lighter Harper was sitting on his leather sofa, eating a bagel. She was wearing her overalls again, having refused to wear corporate camouflage. "So," she said, chewing thoughtfully, "the plan is to walk in there, show them the logs, and watch her melt like a witch." "Essentially," Ethan said, adjusting his cufflinks. "But Chloe is smart. She has locked the server room. I cannot access the physical drive to get the raw data logs. The digital copies I have might be dismissed as doctored." "She locked the room?" Harper asked. "Like with a key?" "With a biometric scanner and a 2,000-bit encryption code," Ethan sighed. "It is impenetrable from the outside without her clearance." "Right," Harper nodded. "Tech stuff. Boring." She stood up and walked over to the massive window. She looked at the building layout on Ethan's wall screen. "Wait," she said, pointing a finger at the screen. "What is this vent here?" "That is the HVAC intake for the server cooling system," Ethan explained. "It keeps the processors from overheating." "And where does it go?" Harper asked. "It runs through the maintenance shaft, behind the living wall." Ethan stopped. He looked at Harper. Harper looked at him. A slow grin spread across her face. "The living wall," she repeated. "The one I installed. The one that has a hidden irrigation access panel right next to the server room ventilation." Ethan's eyes widened. "You put an access panel there?" "I had to," Harper shrugged. "The ferns get thirsty. I needed a way to reach the pipes without climbing a ladder every day. It is behind the giant monstera on the 3rd floor." "Harper," Ethan said, grabbing her shoulders, "you are a genius." "I know," she beamed. "Now, do you have a screwdriver? Or do I have to use a hairpin?" 10 minutes later, the CEO of a billion-dollar company and a plant stylist were crawling through a maintenance crawl-space behind a wall of tropical plants. "This is undignified," Ethan muttered, brushing a spiderweb off his face. "Shush," Harper whispered ahead of him. "We are stealth operatives. Be the vine, Ethan. Silent. Creeping." "I am not a vine," he grumbled. "I am a man in a $4,000 suit." "A dirty suit," she corrected. "Okay, here it is." She pushed aside a heavy panel hidden behind thick leaves. Through the grate they could see into the server room. It was a cold, blue-lit room filled with humming black towers. "Can you reach the terminal?" Ethan asked. "My arm is too short," Harper said, straining. "But, aha." She pulled a long, telescoping plant pruner from her back pocket. "You brought pruning shears?" Ethan asked, incredulous. "Always be prepared," she winked. She extended the tool. With surgical precision, she used the claw end to hook onto a USB drive that was plugged into the main console, the backup drive Chloe had likely left there after the sabotage. "Gotcha," Harper whispered. She carefully pulled the drive toward the grate. She grabbed it. She handed it to Ethan. "Is this the smoking gun?" she asked. Ethan inspected it. "If this contains the original access timestamps, yes." "Wanter, this is the bullet." He looked at her. Her face was smudged with dust. There was a leaf stuck in her hair. "You just saved my company," he said. "I saved the plants," she corrected. "If Chloe takes over, she will replace them all with plastic. I cannot allow that." Ethan laughed. He leaned in and kissed her on the forehead. "Let's go," he said. "We have a board meeting to crash." The boardroom was tense. 12 men and women in gray suits sat around a long mahogany table. Chloe Sterling stood at the head, looking triumphant. "As you can see," Chloe was saying, pointing to a graph on the screen, "Mr. Blackwood's recent decisions have caused a 7% drop in investor confidence. His association with questionable individuals has compromised our security. Questionable individuals, a board member muttered. You mean the gardener? Exactly, Chloe nodded. It is tragic, really. He is clearly unwell. I propose an immediate transition of power to ensure stability. Seconded, a man said. All in favor? Chloe asked, smiling. The doors burst open. Ethan Blackwood strode in. He was dusty. He was disheveled. He looked furious. And right beside him walked Harper Rose, wearing denim overalls and holding a potted cactus. Objection, Ethan said, his voice booming. Ethan, Chloe sighed, not looking surprised. This is a private meeting. Security. Sit down, Chloe, Ethan said, walking to the head of the table. He didn't sit. He stood. He placed the USB drive on the table. It made a small click. What is this? The chairman asked. This, Ethan said, is the unedited server log from the night of the breach. It shows that the command to disable the firewall did not come from Miss Rose's phone. It came from a hardline connection in this building. He plugged the drive into the projector. The screen flickered. A list of code appeared. User ID C. Sterling, Ethan read aloud. Time, 8:42 p.m. Location, server room A. The room went deadly silent. All eyes turned to Chloe. Chloe's face went pale. That is fabricated. He forged it. And here Harper spoke up, stepping forward. She placed the cactus on the table. Is the witness. The board members looked at the cactus. They looked at Harper. Excuse me, the chairman asked. This cactus, Harper said, pointing to the plant, was sitting on the shelf in the server room. I put it there to absorb radiation. And look at this. She pointed to a small, hidden camera nestled between the spines of the cactus. I also put a nanny cam in it, Harper shrugged, because I thought the cleaning crew was over watering it. Turns out it caught something else. She tapped her phone. The video feed appeared on the big screen. It was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Chloe entering the server room. It showed her typing on the console. It showed her laughing as she plugged in a drive. Busted, Harper said. Chloe stared at the screen. She looked like she was going to be sick. Chloe stammered. I was testing the system. You were framing an innocent woman and sabotaging my company, Ethan said, his voice cold as ice. You are fired, Chloe, and you will be hearing from our lawyers and the police. Chloe looked around the room. No one met her eyes. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, her heels clicking frantically on the floor. The door slammed shut. Ethan let out a long breath. He looked at the board. Now, he said, straightening his tie, if we are done with the drama, I believe we have a company to run, and I would like to introduce you to our new Chief Sustainability Officer. He gestured to Harper. Me? Harper squeaked. I thought I was a consultant. Promotion, Ethan whispered. Take the job. It comes with health insurance. Harper looked at the board members. They looked terrified of her. Fine, she said, crossing her arms. But first order of business, more windows in here. You guys look like vampires. The chairman coughed. Then he smiled. I suppose that can be arranged. 6 months later. It was Christmas Eve. The Nebula campus had transformed. It was no longer a cold fortress. It was a green sanctuary. The lobby was a vertical garden. The cafeteria served food. That wasn't gray. And on the ground floor, a new space had opened. The greenhouse, cafe. It was packed. People sat in wicker chairs, surrounded by jasmine vines and hanging ivy. There was no Wi-Fi, just coffee, conversation, and oxygen. Ethan stood by the counter, watching Harper work. She was steaming milk, laughing with a customer. She wore a green apron that said chlorophyll addict. She looked happy. Ethan walked over. The crowd parted for him. He wasn't the scary CEO anymore. He was the guy who helped water the plants on Tuesdays. "Hey," he said, leaning on the counter. "Hey yourself," Harper smiled, wiping her hands. "You are late. The latte art competition started 5 minutes ago." "I was busy," Ethan said. "I had to pick something up." "Oh, more fertilizer?" she teased. "No," Ethan said. "This." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. The he went quiet. The espresso machine hissed and stopped. Harper froze. She looked at the box. She looked at him. "Ethan," she whispered. "Is that?" Ethan opened the box. Inside was a ring. But it wasn't a diamond. It was a band of gold, twisted to look like two vines wrapping around each other, holding a small, rare emerald in the center. "It is vintage," Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly. "1920s. Art Deco. It reminded me of us, tangled up, growing together." Harper put her hand over her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan Blackwood," she said, "are you proposing to me in a coffee shop?" "It is not just a coffee shop," Ethan said, getting down on one knee. "It is your dream, and I want to be part of it. I want to be the soil to your roots, Harper. I want to grow old with you. I want to argue about overwatering the ferns for the rest of my life." He looked up at her. "Will you marry me? Or is that too inefficient?" Harper laughed. A tear rolled down her cheek. "It is terribly inefficient," she said, pulling him up by his lapels, "but I love it." She kissed him. The cafe erupted in cheers. Leo the banjo player started playing All I Want for Christmas. Is You in the corner. Barnaby the dog barked happily. Ethan held her close. He smelled the coffee, the vanilla, the dirt. He felt her heart beating against his. He looked out the window. It was snowing in Seattle. A rare white Christmas. "Merry Christmas, Harper," he whispered. "Merry Christmas, Ethan," she whispered back. Above them, tucked into the rafters, a sprig of mistletoe hung from a healthy, vibrant fiddle-leaf fig. Ferdinand had never looked better. 3 weeks after the proposal. January in Seattle was usually gray, but inside the Nebula penthouse it was a tropical paradise. Harper had officially moved in. The sterile glass box was now filled with terracotta pots, woven rugs, and a very large, very hairy dog named Barnaby, who had claimed Ethan's Italian leather sofa as his personal throne. It was 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Ethan was in the kitchen attempting to make pancakes. He was wearing pajama pants and a T-shirt that said Plant Daddy, a gag gift from Harper that he secretly loved. Harper was sitting on the counter, stealing blueberries from the bowl. "You are over-mixing the batter," she critiqued, swinging her legs. "Pancakes need to be fluffy, Ethan. Not dense like a brick of code." "I am removing the lumps," Ethan muttered, whisking methodically. "Lumps are inefficient." "Lumps are character," Harper countered. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "But you look very cute when you are concentrating on flower physics." Ethan smiled. He turned to kiss her properly, but the elevator chimed. They both froze. "Did you order more soil?" Ethan asked. "No," Harper said. "Did you order more monitors?" "Number." The elevator doors slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. Stepping out was a woman. She was tall. She was wearing a white fur coat that probably cost more than Harper's entire life earnings. She had silver hair styled into a sharp bob that looked like it could cut glass. Behind her stood a chauffeur holding 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases. It was Victoria Blackwood, Ethan's mother. She lowered her sunglasses. She looked at the jungle of plants. She looked at the dog sleeping on the sofa. She looked at Harper, who was barefoot on the counter with blueberry juice on her chin. Finally, she looked at Ethan and his plant daddy shirt. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was calm, elegant, and terrifying. "I leave for Europe for 6 months, and you turn my penthouse into a petting zoo." Ethan dropped the whisk. It hit the bowl with a dull clatter. "Mother," he said, straightening his posture instinctively, "you are back early." "Clearly," Victoria said, stepping into the room. She wrinkled her nose as she passed a large fern. "It smells like compost in here." She stopped in front of Harper. She looked her up and down, analyzing her like a biological specimen. "And who," Victoria asked, "is the barefoot child on the kitchen counter?" Harper swallowed. She hopped off the counter, wiping her hand on her pajamas. She extended a hand. "Hi, I am Harper. I am the fianceur." Victoria stared at the hand. She did not take it. "Fiancé," Victoria repeated the word as if it were a foreign slur. "I see. I assume this is a prank, or perhaps a midlife crisis that arrived 10 years early." "It is not a prank, Mother," Ethan said, stepping between them. He took Harper's hand. "Harper is the woman I am going to marry, and we live here, with the dog, and the plants." Victoria looked at Barnaby, who let out a loud, unrefined snore. "I need a drink," Victoria announced. "Vodka. Neat. And tell the driver to burn that sofa." The next few days were a study in psychological warfare. Victoria Blackwood did not yell. She did not throw things. She simply existed, radiating disapproval, like a nuclear reactor leaking radiation. She had taken over the guest suite, but she spent her days supervising the wedding planning. It was Tuesday, 11 a.m. They were sitting in the living room. Harper was trying to eat a bagel, while Victoria critiqued a binder of floral arrangements. "Baby's breath," Victoria scoffed, flipping a page. "It is a weed, Harper. It is what you put in a bouquet when you cannot afford real flowers. We will have orchids, white ones, imported from Singapore." "I like baby's breath," Harper said firmly. "It is whimsical, and we are not doing white orchids. It looks like a funeral." "It looks expensive," Victoria corrected. "Which is the point. The Blackwood wedding will be the social event of the decade. The senator is coming. The ambassador of Sweden is coming." "I don't know the ambassador of Sweden," Harper said. "I want to invite my friends. Leo plays the banjo. Maya has pink hair." Victoria closed the binder slowly. She looked at Harper with icy pity. "My dear," she said, "this is not a birthday party at a bowling alley. This is a merger of dynasties. Although, in your case, it is more of a hostile takeover of a charity case." Harper dropped her bagel. "Excuse me, Mother," Ethan's voice cut through the room. He was standing in the doorway of his home office, holding a tablet. His face was dark. "That is enough," Ethan said, walking over. "You are being rude." "I'm being realistic," Victoria said, standing up. "Ethan, look at her. She is lovely in a rustic sort of way, but she is not one of us. She does not know how to host a gala. She does not know which fork to use for escargot. She will embarrass you." "The only person embarrassing me right now is you," Ethan said. "Oh, please," Victoria waved a hand. "You are infatuated. It will pass." I am just trying to ensure the wedding photos do not look like a farmer's market brochure." Harper stood up. Her face was red, but her eyes were dry. "You know what, Victoria," Harper said, her voice shaking slightly. "You are right. I don't know which fork to use for snails, because I don't eat snails. I eat food that actually tastes good." She took a step closer to the older woman. "And I might not be one of us, but I know my son, well, your son, better than you do. I know he hates orchids because they remind him of your cold, empty house in the Hamptons. I know he likes baby's breath because it reminds him of the day we met. And I know that he is happy. For the first time in his life, he is happy." Harper poked Victoria in the chest, a light, fearless poke. "So you can invite the ambassador of Sweden. But if you insult me, or my plants, or my banjo-playing friends one more time, I will ban you from the wedding. And I will do it with a smile." Victoria stared at her. She looked down at the spot where Harper had poked her white cashmere sweater. Silence stretched in the room. Even Barnaby woke up and looked concerned. Then the corner of Victoria's mouth twitched. "You have a spine," Victoria noted. "I thought you were a invertebrate." "Interesting. I deal with thorns for a living," Harper said, crossing her arms. "I can handle a prick." Ethan choked back a laugh. Victoria looked at Harper. Really looked at her. Then she picked up her vodka glass. "Fine," Victoria said. "No orchids. But if I see a single mason jar, I am leaving." "Deal," Harper said. Victoria took a sip. "And get that dog off the furniture. He is shedding on my aura." "Barnaby stays," Harper said. "But I will buy you a lint roller." Victoria sighed. A long, suffering sigh. But there was no venom in it this time. "Ethan," she said, looking at her son, "she is annoying, but she is adequate." "High praise, mother," Ethan smiled, wrapping his arm around Harper. "Don't push it," Victoria warned. "Now, let's discuss the cake. I assume you want something made of carrots and dirt." "Carrot cake," Harper grinned, "with cream cheese frosting. And yes, it will be delicious." 6 months later, June. The wedding was not held in a ballroom. It was not held in a cathedral. It was held in the newly renovated rooftop garden of the Nebula Tower. It was a compromise. There were white tablecloths and crystal glasses for Victoria, but the centerpieces were wildflowers and herbs. The music was a string quartet, but they were playing an acoustic version of a Beatles song. The sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Ethan stood at the altar. He was wearing a tuxedo, but his boutonniere was a sprig of rosemary and a tiny succulent. He looked nervous. He kept checking his watch. "Relax, man," Leo, the banjo player, whispered. He was the best man. He was wearing a suit that actually fit, thanks to Ethan's tailor. "She is coming. She is just probably talking to a tree on the way up." Then the music changed. The doors opened. Harper Rose stepped out. She was not wearing a traditional princess dress. She was wearing a gown of soft flowing lace that looked like woven leaves. Her hair was loose, crowned with a wreath of real jasmine flowers. She looked like a forest spirit who had wandered into the city and decided to stay. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. He forgot about the merger he had closed that morning. He forgot about the stock price. He forgot about his mother, who was sitting in the front row dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. All he saw was her. Harper walked down the aisle. She was smiling, that bright sunshine smile that had lit up his dark apartment during a blackout. She reached him. She took his hands. Her hands were warm. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back. The officiant, a nervous judge who owed Ethan a favor, cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today." They went through the ceremony. They exchanged rings, the vintage vine ring for her, a simple band of brushed gold for him. Then it was time for the vows. Ethan took a deep breath. He pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket. "Harper," he began. His voice was steady, projected to the crowd, but his eyes were locked on hers. "Before I met you, my life was a series of binary choices. 1 or 0, success or failure, on or off. It was efficient. It was perfect, and it was completely empty." He paused, squeezing her hands. "You crashed into my life with a camping lantern and a smashed sandwich. You taught me that life is not about code. It is about the mess. It is about the dirt under your fingernails. It is about waiting for something to grow, even when you cannot see the roots." A few people in the audience sniffled. Victoria blew her nose loudly. "I promise to love you," Ethan continued. "I promise to water your ferns when you are tired. I promise to eat your lumpy pancakes, and I promise that no matter how dark it gets, I will never let the lights go out again." Harper wiped a tear from her cheek. She didn't have a paper. She spoke from the heart. "Ethan," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you are the most stubborn, logical, frustrating man I have ever met. You tried to analyze the structural integrity of a biscuit." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But you are also the man who carried 50 pounds of manure in a rainstorm to save my tent. You are the man who learned to love the things that cannot be controlled. You are my roots, Ethan, and I promise to always be your son. I love you, even when you are being a grumpy billionaire." "I pronounce you husband and wife," the judge said, smiling. "You may kiss the bride." Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't a polite society wedding kiss. It was a kiss that said, "I am home." The crowd cheered. Leo threw rose petals. Barnaby the dog barked. And high above them the Seattle sky finally cleared, letting the real stars shine down on the boy in the glass box and the girl who taught him how to bloom.